The office was eerily quiet after hours, the hum of fluorescent lights the only sound breaking the silence. My desk lamp cast a soft glow over stacks of reports and scattered notes, a reminder of another long day. Most of my colleagues had clocked out hours ago, leaving me alone with the rhythmic tap of keys and the occasional rustle of papers. I preferred it this way. No distractions, just pure focus. I had just finished typing the last line of a report when I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up, surprised to see him, Mr. Hargrove. He was dressed impeccably as always, his charcoal suit tailored to perfection, crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest a hint of relaxation. His tie was gone, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms dusted with a touch of silver hair. He carried himself with an ease that came with confidence and years of experience. Burning the midnight oil, huh? His voice was smooth, low, the kind that made people pause and listen. I straightened up, quickly saving my work. Just wrapping up the monthly reports. Thought I'd get a head start. He nodded approvingly, his hands slipping into his pockets as he leaned against the edge of my desk. That's what I like about you. Always pushing harder than anyone else around here. I felt my cheeks warm slightly under his gaze. Compliments from Mr. Hargrove were rare and never given without reason. He had a reputation for being sharp, even ruthless when it came to business. Yet, in this quiet moment, his expression was softer, almost reflective. I appreciate that, I replied, trying not to sound as flustered as I felt. I just try to do my best. His eyes lingered on mine for a moment before he glanced around the empty office. You know, I was about to head home. Got a new bottle of Dalmore 25, a rare find. I was planning to crack it open tonight. He paused, his gaze shifting back to me, as if considering something. You drink whiskey? I blinked, caught off guard. Yeah, I do. Sometimes. His lips curled into a slight smile. Well, if you're not too busy, you could join me. It's too good a bottle to drink alone. The invitation hung in the air, heavy with implications I wasn't entirely sure how to interpret. I looked around the empty office as if someone might appear and offer me advice. When no one did, I turned back to him. Are you sure? I asked, my voice betraying a hint of disbelief. Of course, he replied easily, straightening up from my desk. You've worked hard these past few months. Consider it my way of saying thanks. Besides, I could use the company. His eyes were steady, unflinching. I searched for any hint of jest or insincerity, but found none. My mind whirled with 1,000 thoughts. Was this normal? Had he done this with other employees? Was this just a drink? But the curiosity, the excitement that simmered beneath my rational thoughts, was enough to make me nod. All right, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I'd love to. His smile widened, genuine and unguarded. Great, I'll call us a car. Before I could second-guess my decision, he pulled out his phone, dialing with the kind of efficiency that spoke of routine. I busied myself with tidying my desk, heart thumping louder with each passing second. As he ended the call, he glanced at me. Give me 5 minutes to wrap up. Meet me downstairs? Sure, I replied, standing up and gathering my things. My hands shook slightly as I packed my laptop bag, the reality of what I'd just agreed to setting in. Drinks with my boss, at his place. The thought sent a ripple of anticipation through me, though I wasn't entirely sure why. He lingered for a moment, longer, his gaze studying me in a way that made my stomach flip. See you in 5, he said, his voice softening just a touch before he turned and disappeared into his office. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty hallway where he'd just been, the distant echo of his footsteps fading away. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady my nerves. I had always admired him, his confidence, his sharp mind, the way he commanded respect without effort. But I never imagined I'd be standing here, preparing to follow him home for drinks. With a final glance around the empty office, I grabbed my coat, slung my bag over my shoulder, and headed for the elevator. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a spacious, marble-floored hallway illuminated by subtle, recessed lighting. His apartment was at the far end, an elegant black door with a silver handle that gleamed under the hallway lights. I adjusted my coat, nerves thrumming just beneath the surface as I approached and knocked. The door opened almost instantly, as if he'd been waiting just behind it. Mr. Hargrove, no, Michael, as he insisted I call him during the drive over, greeted me with a smile. He had changed out of his suit jacket, now in a fitted black sweater that accentuated his broad shoulders, sleeves still rolled up to reveal his forearms. His hair, usually impeccably styled, was slightly tousled, giving him a more relaxed, approachable look. "Come in," he said warmly, stepping aside to allow me in. I walked into his apartment, and the first thing that struck me was the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows lined the far wall, offering a breathtaking panorama of the city skyline. Twinkling lights stretched as far as the eye could see, like scattered stars over concrete and steel. The apartment itself was sleek and modern. White walls, minimalist furniture, and polished hardwood floors. Tasteful art pieces hung on the walls, and soft, ambient lighting cast a cozy glow over the space. "Wow," I breathed out, unable to hide my amazement. "This is incredible." Michael chuckled, shutting the door behind me. "I don't spend as much time here as I'd like, but it's nice to come back to after a long day." He walked past me, motioning towards the living room. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll grab the whiskey." I wandered into the living room, running my hand along the back of a leather couch that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel suite. There were no family pictures, just clean lines and elegant design. I settled onto the couch, sinking into the smooth leather, my eyes drifting back to the skyline. Michael returned moments later, 2 crystal tumblers in hand, each filled with a generous splash of amber liquid. He handed me one and sat down beside me, not at the far end of the couch, but close enough that I could catch the faint trace of his cologne, crisp and masculine. "To a job well done," he said, raising his glass. I raised mine in response, clinking the edge lightly against his. "To good whiskey," I replied, earning a grin from him before we both took a sip. The whiskey was smooth, rich, and full-bodied, warming me from the inside out. I set my glass down on the coffee table, admiring the heavy weight of it. "This is really good. Dalmore 25, one of my favorites." He leaned back, stretching an arm along the back of the couch, his body angled towards me. "I don't get to share it with many people." I looked up, surprised. "Really? I just assumed, with the business and all, you'd be entertaining clients constantly." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Clients are work. I like to keep business and pleasure separate." His eyes found mine, and for a moment, the room seemed to quiet around us. I prefer good company over forced conversation. I wasn't sure how to respond to that, so I took another sip of whiskey instead. Silence settled between us. Not awkward, but charged with something unspoken. I noticed the way his gaze lingered, how his fingers tapped gently against the back of the couch, how his posture was relaxed but deliberate, as if he were waiting for something. "So," he began, breaking the silence. "How is it you ended up working with us? I don't think I've ever heard the full story." I blinked, the shift in conversation catching me off guard. "Oh, it's nothing special," I replied. "Just a lot of persistence and probably a bit of luck. I applied 3 times before I finally got a call back." His eyebrows lifted. 3 times? I shrugged. I guess I was stubborn. Or desperate. He laughed, a deep, genuine sound that softened the hard lines of his jaw. "Well, it paid off. You've been one of our best hires." My cheeks flushed, and I looked down at my glass, swirling the whiskey around before taking another sip. "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." He leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady and unflinching. "I mean it," he said, his voice lower, almost intimate. "You've got a real fire in you. I've always admired that." The compliment hung heavy in the air, weighted with sincerity. I swallowed hard, meeting his eyes again. There was something different in them, an openness that hadn't been there before. Our conversation flowed easily after that, each sip of whiskey loosening the tension, peeling back layers of formality. He shared stories about his past, his struggles, his ambitions, the failed marriage that had left him alone in this sprawling apartment. I found myself opening up too, revealing pieces of my own life, my aspirations, my fears. It was strangely effortless. But it wasn't just the words. It was the way he looked at me. Long glances that lingered just a little too long. The casual brush of his fingers when he handed me the bottle to refill my glass. Each touch sent a spark up my arm, a whisper of something deeper, something forbidden. By the time the bottle was halfway empty, I knew I wasn't imagining it. There was a tension coiling between us, tightening with every shared smile, every accidental brush of our knees. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. The whiskey was half gone, the bottle sitting comfortably between us on the glass coffee table, its amber contents catching the glow of the city lights outside. Michael had dimmed the lights, casting the room in a warm, intimate glow. I wasn't sure when the conversation had shifted from light-hearted jokes to deeper confessions, but I welcomed it. His voice had softened, his posture more relaxed, leaning back into the plush leather cushions with his arms stretched casually along the back of the couch, close enough that I could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. He swirled the whiskey in his glass, watching the liquid swirl and settle. "It's funny," he began, eyes still fixed on the drink, "how things don't always turn out the way you imagine." I tilted my head, curious. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, setting his glass down with a gentle clink. His eyes met mine, clear, unguarded. "When I was younger, I had it all mapped out. The job, the perfect marriage, the house, you know, the whole script." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And for a while, I thought I had it." There was a pause, the silence stretching just long enough for me to understand. "Your wife?" I asked gently. He nodded, fingers tapping idly against his knee. "Ex-wife now. We split 2 years ago." He let out a breath, leaning back again, his gaze drifting towards the skyline as if searching for answers in the distant lights. We had everything, or at least it looked like it, but underneath, it was just hollow. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "I was living for everyone else's expectations, always worried about appearances, what the partners thought, what the neighbors thought, what my father thought." He shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "And I was good at it. I'm good at pretending." I watched him, the sharp lines of his jaw softened by vulnerability. I'd never seen him like this. Unguarded, stripped of the confident armor he wore so well at the office. It was disarming, to say the least. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice softer than I expected. "That must have been difficult." His gaze returned to me, piercing and sincere. "I don't tell many people that." I swallowed, my heart fluttering in my chest. "Why me?" Michael's eyes held mine, steady and unflinching. "Because you're real," he said simply. "You've always been real." I blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "You don't play games. You don't care about climbing ladders or pretending to be something you're not. You're just you." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together, elbows resting on his knees. "I've always admired that about you." My face warmed under his gaze, the sincerity in his voice striking deeper than I was prepared for. I laughed nervously, taking a sip of whiskey to steady myself. I don't know what to say to that." "You don't have to say anything," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. His eyes flickered down to his hands, fingers tracing the edge of his glass. A silence settled between us, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the soft hum of the city outside. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. His confession lingered in the air, palpable and raw. It was like standing on the edge of something vast and uncharted, the ground unsteady beneath me. I forced myself to breathe, to break the silence. "Michael." He looked up, his eyes searching, mine, unguarded and open. "There's more," he said, voice cracking just slightly. He paused, steeling himself before continuing. "I don't just admire you. I've felt something. For a long time." My heart stuttered. and I was certain he could hear it pounding in the stillness of the room. You… what? His gaze didn't waver. I'm not good at this, he admitted, his fingers rubbing the back of his neck nervously. I'm better at board meetings and negotiations. But this, what I feel when I'm around you, it's different. It's real. My breath caught in my throat. I could feel the tension, the vulnerability etched into every word he spoke. For the first time, Michael wasn't my boss. He wasn't the sharp-suited executive who ran meetings with an iron fist. He was just a man, one who, in this moment, had stripped away every layer of defense. I didn't know how to respond. The whiskey burned in my throat as I took another sip, stalling for time, processing his words. I don't know what to say, I stammered, my hands trembling slightly around the glass. Tell me I'm not crazy, he murmured, his voice almost pleading. Tell me you feel it too. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. I do. He blinked, as if surprised, but his eyes lit up with something that looked like relief, like hope. You do? I nodded, my voice steadier this time. I've felt it for a while now. I didn't think… I trailed off, my eyes searching his face for some sign of regret, some hint that I'd misread him. But there was none. His expression softened, his shoulders relaxing as he leaned back, exhaling a breath he must have been holding for years. The tension between us, unspoken for so long, now hung exposed and raw, electric and real. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with possibility. He reached for the whiskey bottle, refilling our glasses with a smile that was warmer, softer than I'd ever seen. To being honest, he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against his, the crystal ringing with a delicate chime. To honesty, I echoed, my heart pounding with the weight of what had just been revealed. The whiskey bottle was nearly empty, its amber contents dwindling as the night wore on. The air felt heavier, charged with something neither of us spoke about, but both of us felt. The city lights sparkled beyond the massive glass windows, a million tiny stars scattered across the landscape. The room had grown warmer, the lights dimmed to a soft glow that danced off the polished surfaces and framed art. Michael leaned back into the cushions, his eyes tracing the line of my jaw, lingering just a bit longer than necessary. His voice had dropped an octave, rich and smooth like the whiskey we'd been sipping. It's a beautiful night, he murmured, his gaze drifting toward the skyline. Want to take a look from the balcony? I nodded, not trusting my voice. My heart was thrumming in my chest, anticipation threading through my veins. He stood, extending his hand toward me. I hesitated, then took it, his fingers warm and firm, against mine. His grip was steady, grounding me even as my thoughts spiraled. He led me through the living room, past the grand piano that gleamed in the corner, and toward a pair of glass doors. He slid them open, and we stepped out onto the balcony. The cool night air kissed my skin, a stark contrast to the warmth of his hand still holding mine. The view was breathtaking. The city stretched out infinitely, twinkling lights painting the darkness with hints of life and movement. Cars crept along like tiny fireflies, and skyscrapers punctuated the horizon like pillars of light. I gripped the railing, steadying myself. As the wind tousled my hair, Michael released my hand and stepped up beside me, leaning against the railing. I never get tired of this, he said softly, his eyes fixed on the horizon. No matter how many late nights I spend up here, it always feels new. I glanced over at him, taking in the softened lines of his face, the way the city lights reflected in his eyes. He looked younger out here, stripped of the guarded expression he wore at the office. Vulnerable, almost. I get that, I replied. It's peaceful. We stood like that for a while, side by side, the silence stretching out comfortably between us. But it wasn't just silence. It was heavy, electric. Every time he shifted, every brush of his arm against mine, it sent sparks shooting up my spine. He turned to me then, his eyes softer, gaze lingering. I don't do this, he said quietly, almost to himself. Do what? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He swallowed, his eyes not leaving mine. Invite people over. Open up like this. It's not me. He took a step closer, his hand resting gently on the railing beside mine. Our fingers were millimeters apart, not quite touching, but close enough to feel the warmth radiating off his skin. My heart pounded, the sound of it echoing in my ears. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him. Couldn't step back even if I wanted to. I'm glad you did, I said, my voice softer than I intended. His eyes flickered down to my mouth, then back up. The world around us seemed to fade, the distant hum of the city dulling to a whisper. His hand inched closer to mine, our fingers brushing. Just barely. But it was enough. Enough to make my breath hitch, enough to make my hands tremble. He leaned in slightly, testing the space between us. I didn't move. I couldn't. The tension snapped like a taut string breaking, and before I realized what was happening, his lips were on mine. The kiss was soft at first, exploratory, almost hesitant. His hand came up, resting gently at the back of my neck, pulling me closer. I responded instinctively, my hands finding his waist, fingers gripping the fabric of his sweater. The world fell away, and there was only the press of his mouth against mine, warm and insistent. I hadn't realized how much I'd wanted this until it happened, how much I'd craved the feel of his hands, the taste of whiskey lingering on his lips. He deepened the kiss, his fingers threading through my hair, and I leaned into him, my back pressing against the balcony railing. The cool breeze swept around us, but I barely noticed. My senses were locked on him, his scent, his warmth, the way his hands explored my back with gentle but deliberate movements. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were half-lidded, his breathing unsteady. I've wanted to do that for a long time, he admitted, his voice husky and low. I laughed softly, still trying to catch my breath. I never would have guessed, I replied, the words slipping out with a grin I couldn't contain. His thumb brushed against my cheek, lingering just beneath my jaw. I'm not always good at showing what I feel, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But with you, it's different. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I reached up, brushing my fingers along the stubble of his jaw. It's different for me too, I confessed, the admission tumbling out before I could second-guess it. A smile broke across his face. Genuine, unguarded. He leaned in again, his lips capturing mine with a tenderness that melted away the last of my reservations, and there, with the city lights twinkling beneath us and the night stretching endlessly around us, the barriers broke completely. Whatever lines had been drawn, whatever walls had been built up over the years, they crumbled under the weight of that moment. We stayed out there for a long time, wrapped up in each other, the chill of the wind forgotten as warmth spread between us. The city continued to glow, oblivious to the world we'd just created on that balcony, one that belonged only to us. Sunlight crept through the edges of the blinds, spilling soft, golden light across the room. I blinked awake slowly, disoriented for a moment by the unfamiliar ceiling above me. The bed was impossibly soft, the sheets smooth against my skin. It took only a second for last night to come rushing back, a flood of images and sensations. That left me staring at the ceiling, breathless, his apartment, his bed. Michael. I turned my head, half expecting him to be beside me, but the space was empty. The sheets were still slightly warm, rumpled where he had lain. I sat up slowly, pulling the comforter around my waist, and glanced around the room. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows over minimalist decor, sleek, modern, just like the rest of his apartment. A faint aroma of coffee drifted in from the other room, rich and inviting. My heart thudded in my chest, a mixture of anxiety and disbelief. Had that really happened? Did we really? I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. Part of me wanted to hide beneath the sheets and pretend I hadn't crossed that line, hadn't kissed him, hadn't woken up here. But the other part of me, the part still tingling from the way he'd touched me, the way he'd whispered my name, was anything but regretful. I slid out of bed, my feet hitting the cool hardwood floor. My clothes were neatly folded on the chair in the corner, my shoes tucked beneath it. The gesture made me smile despite myself. Classic Michael, organized even in the chaos of last night. I pulled on my shirt and pants, smoothing the wrinkles as best as I could, and padded softly toward the kitchen. He was there, just as I expected, standing by the counter with his back to me. He wore a white t-shirt and gray sweatpants, his hair slightly mussed, giving him a softer, more approachable look. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, and I hesitated at the doorway, watching him for a moment. He must have sensed me, because he turned, his eyes lighting up as they met mine. "Good morning," he greeted, voice warm and easy. "Morning," I replied, my voice cracking slightly. I stepped further into the kitchen, nerves fluttering in my stomach. He didn't seem anxious, though. He looked happy, relaxed. He gestured toward the counter where 2 mugs sat steaming. "Figured you might need this," he said, sliding one toward me. I stepped forward and took it, the warmth seeping into my palms. "Thanks." I took a sip, savoring the rich, dark flavor. He leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms, eyes never leaving mine. I wasn't sure what to say. There were a million questions burning on my tongue, but I couldn't form the words. What did this mean? How would things be at the office? Was this just a one-time thing? Michael seemed to read my thoughts because he stepped forward, his hand brushing mine where it rested on the counter. "You're overthinking," he said softly, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. I huffed out a laugh. "Can you blame me?" "No," he admitted, setting his mug down and straightening up. "But if it helps, I don't regret it." His voice softened, eyes steady. Not even a little. My chest tightened and I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine again. More deliberate this time, his fingers curling slightly over mine. "That's up to us, isn't it?" I looked up, meeting his gaze. His expression was open, sincere. "You mean, this isn't just—" He shook his head before I could finish. "I don't want it to be a one-time thing." His hand squeezed mine gently, grounding me in that moment. "If you don't either." I felt my shoulders relax, the tension that had been knotting in my stomach since I woke up melting away. "I don't either," I confessed, the words coming out in a rush. Michael's smile spread slowly across his face, softening the hard lines of his jaw. He released my hand only to move closer, his fingers brushing my cheek. "Good," he whispered, his eyes flickering to my lips before meeting my gaze again. "Because I wasn't planning on letting you go." The warmth of his touch lingered even after he pulled back, and I found myself smiling, really smiling, for the first time that morning. "I guess breakfast is on me next time," I quipped, the tension finally easing. Michael chuckled, the sound low and comforting. "I'll hold you to that." We stood there in the glow of morning light, mugs of coffee in hand, the silence between us no longer heavy but comfortable. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Last night wasn't a mistake. It was just the beginning. The office had the same polished shine, the same steady hum of keyboards and ringing phones, but everything felt different. I couldn't explain it. Not to anyone else anyway. But the air seemed lighter, the colors brighter. Even my footsteps had more confidence as I moved down the hallway, files tucked under my arm. A week had passed since that night, since the whiskey, the confession, and the balcony that held secrets under city lights. Since Michael's apartment, where lines blurred and boundaries melted away. I'd expected awkwardness, maybe even a touch of regret, but there was none. If anything, Michael was more himself, more open, more genuine. We had agreed to keep things professional at the office. His idea mostly, though I understood. Appearances mattered, and there were always eyes watching, whispers waiting to be sparked. But there were cracks in the facade. Small moments that no one else would catch. A lingering glance during morning meetings. The way his hand would brush mine when we exchanged documents. Just a touch too long to be accidental. The slight curve of his lips when I caught his eye across the conference table. It was subtle, but it was ours. I passed his office on my way to the break room one afternoon, catching a glimpse of him through the glass. He was on the phone, his face serious. But when he glanced up and saw me, his expression softened. A smile flickered across his lips, brief, just for me. And then he returned to his call. My heart thudded in my chest, and I ducked away before anyone could see the grin I couldn't contain. We found our moments where we could. A quick chat in the elevator when no one else was around. A hushed conversation in the break room when everyone else was out for lunch. Little stolen glances and soft smiles that spoke of things only we knew. Outside the office, things were different, free. The walls of professionalism crumbled, replaced with easy laughter and comfortable silences. We went out for drinks, sometimes dinner, always careful but never distant. Michael's guard was down, his warmth genuine and unguarded. He wasn't just my boss. He was something more, something real. I couldn't help but reflect on how it all began. One simple invitation, an offer of whiskey, a gesture of thanks. I'd hesitated before saying yes, not knowing how it would change everything. But now, I couldn't imagine things any other way. It wasn't always perfect. There were moments of tension, whispers we both pretended not to hear. But the stolen moments made it worth it. The late-night conversations, the way his hand found mine under the table when no one was watching, the quiet assurance that this wasn't just some fleeting thing. It was real. As I sat at my desk, the familiar ping of a message popped up on my screen. I clicked it open, already smiling when I saw his name. Michael Hargrove. Drinks again tonight? I bit back a grin, my fingers tapping out a quick reply. Me. I thought we were supposed to keep things professional. There was a pause, then another ping. Michael Hargrove. That's why I'm asking you outside the office. I laughed, the sound startling a few of my nearby coworkers. I glanced around, but no one seemed to notice. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and I typed back before I could second-guess it. Me. Pick me up at 7. Another pause, longer this time, before his reply came through. Michael Hargrove. Wouldn't miss it. I leaned back in my chair, unable to stop the smile spreading across my face. One simple invitation, that was all it took. But somehow I knew this was just the beginning.